Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I will be splitting my time with a member from Davenport. I am so pleased and proud to be part of today's debate on Bill C-48 and be discussing implementing an oil tanker moratorium on British Columbia's northern coast. Mr. Speaker, it's important to remember that with this bill, the government of Canada is honouring its promise to Canadians. By formalizing this moratorium and improving marine safety, the government is delivering on its promise set out in the mandate letter from the Prime Minister to the Minister of Transport. And I want to start by thanking our Prime Minister for his commitment to this tanker moratorium on the Pacific North Coast, and to the Minister of Transport for taking the thoughtful approach that he's taken in consulting widely on this bill and delivering on this commitment. So this is one of those times when it's very, very satisfying to be a member of Parliament.
I'm just going to interrupt the honourable member and remind everyone in the room or in the chamber that there is a presentation being made, someone speaking, and it's great to see everybody getting along and speaking, but it's making it very difficult for me to hear what the parliamentary secretary has to say. So I'll just remind everyone, I'm sure if they have a discussion, they'll take it outside the chamber, and meanwhile we can continue. The honourable parliamentary secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this is an issue that I worked on as a core project in Vancouver Quadra from early 2009. And so I want to also acknowledge all of the constituents of Vancouver Quadra, the environmental groups, the communities, the Indigenous communities in British Columbia's coast who paid attention to the potential risks to our coast and supported the idea of banning crude oil tanker traffic, consistent with a policy moratorium that had been put in place in 1972 by a previous Prime Minister Trudeau. So I would like to share with the members a press release that I wrote after 2 years of work on this in February 2011. And I quote, "Yesterday, Vancouver Quadra Liberal MP Joyce Murray announced that her bill, the Member of Parliament for Vancouver Quadra announced that her bill C-606, a private member's bill to ban oil tanker traffic off of BC's North Coast, has been officially submitted to proceed to debate next month. We are now one step closer to a legislated oil tanker ban on BC's North Coast, the only way to protect our oceans, our communities, and our coastal economy from catastrophic oil spill," stated the MP. "If disaster were to strike our northern coastal waters, BC and Canada as a whole would never be the same." So Bill C-606 legislates a crude oil tanker ban in the dangerous inland waters around Haida Gwaii, known as Dixon Entrance, Hecate Strait, and Queen Charlotte Sound. The bill would not affect current deliveries of diesel and other oil products to local communities. So you can see, Mr. Speaker, that this work to protect that area of the coast has been going on for a long time. The press release continued to say, "We have witnessed the Gulf of Mexico and the Exxon Valdez oil spills. It's just not worth the risk," stated the MP for Vancouver Quadra. "In perfect conditions, industry considers 15% recovery of oil a success. But a recent report by Canada's Environment and Sustainable Development Commissioner raises serious doubts about government's ability to even respond to a spill." So,
just one moment. Okay, now that it's quiet, the honourable member can continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I wanted to lay out that this is an initiative that is widely supported by British Columbians in all parts of the province. And in fact, a press release that I issued in March 2011 talks about a 2-day campaign being kicked off to meet with Vancouver Island residents and stakeholders about Bill C-606, to legislate a ban on crude oil tankers in BC's dangerous northern waterways, and goes on to say that I would be also consulting with the northern communities, the community of Kitimat, where a terminal for an oil pipeline that would be transported through those waters was planned, for which it was planned, and that I would be visiting First Nations community organizations, local businesses, unions, municipalities, in order to reach out to those communities. And I want to say that those early consultations made it very clear that an oil spill would hurt our communities, our environment, our businesses, and our way of life, and that this is not a risk British Columbians can afford to take. Still quoting from that press release. So I'm talking about this because I want to acknowledge and thank some of the key environmental organizations who brought this issue forward to the Liberal caucus of the day. And the four environmental organizations who were very critical to this work, doing the research, encouraging us to move forward on this, were Dogwood Initiative, Living Ocean Society, Stand.Earth, and West Coast Environmental Law. So, Mr. Speaker, this was a real priority, but why was it so important? And why is it so important for a government that is committed to protecting the environment, a particularly sensitive environment in this case, while also protecting and developing a strong economy? Well, that's because BC's coastal economy in 2010 was estimated to have 56,000 jobs that were tied to clean coastal environment. Jobs in fisheries and tourism, ecotourism, recreation, film and television among them. And, Mr. Speaker, it also was about a way of life for our coastal communities. Imagine being in Hartley Bay, a remote coastal community, as I have the privilege to be, and knowing that that community's supermarket really is their freezers where they go and harvest the shellfish, the abalone, the mussels and clams, the salmon, the halibut, and eat that seafood as they have for millennia throughout the year. So it's about a way of life as well as an economy and an environment. I came naturally to thinking about how we can protect our coast environment from a devastating oil spill, and that's because I was a tree planter and reforestation contractor working on the North Coast in my late teens and early 20s, and I came to know it well. I also had the chance to travel up and down the coast as Minister of Environment. So imagine being at the Kutsumateen Grizzly Bear Sanctuary, this amazing rich estuary, with watching the grizzly bears feed with their families, as I had a chance to do, and imagine that being fouled with a crude oil spill, as happened in Alaska's estuaries with the Exxon Valdez oil spill. You could never go back, and so I was committed, and so many British Columbians were committed to ensuring that these dangerous waters would not be the location of a devastating oil spill, because we are reminded by Deepwater Horizon and Exxon Valdez and some of the other spills off our coast that human error and equipment failure are something that one can never guarantee won't happen. So, Mr. Speaker, BC's North Coast is home to the Great Bear Rainforest and some of the world's most diverse ecosystems, including 27 species of marine mammals and 120 species of marine birds and 2,500 individual salmon runs. And one of the big concerns after the Exxon Valdez's example was the jobs that would be lost as well as the impact on the environment. Mr. Speaker, I met with a woman who came to one of my meetings wearing the gumboots that she had worn when she went to clean up the Exxon Valdez spill up in Alaska. So I am so proud of our government and our minister for having done significant consultations throughout the province, to having discussed this with groups from the coast right through the interior, I want to again thank my constituents for supporting me on this, and I'd like to thank our Minister and our Prime Minister for delivering on this promise to British Columbia and to Canada to protect this very special part of our country. Thank you.